Now, here's the funny thing about these belief structures, right? Somebody could be in a slump and not even know why they're in a slump, and that's why we're a coach, right? We can, I don't want to say push somebody into a different direction, but basically how they explain it in hypnosis is that like there's a maze, right? And then we just come with a flashlight and be like, oh, wouldn't that be a better idea? Wouldn't that be a better idea? And then you just kind of decide on your own. Because what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk a little bit about how we can help you stop self-sabotaging. Let's get into it. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the YouTube channel. My name is Scott King, Coach Scott King. I run a DJ company over here in Orlando, Florida. www.djsorlando.com if you want to check that out. And I also have a coaching business where I help people grow the business the way I was able to grow it, with exponential growth year after year. And, well, I learned from many different sources, right? I went to Full Sail. I have a bachelor's degree in communications, and I've learned a lot from hypnosis, NLP, and internet marketers. And if you want to grow your business the way that I did, go to www.coachscottking.com. So what I'm here today is talking about language patterns and maybe self-sabotaging, and you don't even know you're doing it, right? So let's get into that a little bit. So as a hypnotherapist, somebody would come in and they would say something along the lines of, I don't want to live a stressful life. Well, when they say something like stressful, then that's what you're focused on, because the mind doesn't understand negation, right? So if they say, I don't want to be stressed, well, you still have the word stress there, right? So you would want to say something in a proactive manner. So let's just, take a step back. And so NLP, teachings is basically, if you were to close your eyes and say, don't think of a purple elephant, well, your mind would have to create a purple elephant, if I can say it right, and then put a line through it. So your subconscious mind doesn't understand the negation. It just understands, what you told it to create. And the ego always wants to be right. So with that in mind, let's see if we can help you with some sales, right? Some language patterns you could be using and not even know that you're using it, or, you could be self-sabotaging, right? So here's a few things to keep in mind, right? So language patterns that could hurt sales. I'm trying to close more sales. Now let's go back to Yoda. Try? There is no try. There's only do or do not. So when you use the word try, it's something that you want to keep in mind, because if you say, I tried to open the door, that means you didn't open it, right? So if you say, I'm trying to close more sales, then that's not going to help you out a whole lot. You want to say something like, I'm working on closing more sales. So just to let you know, nobody's perfect. No one's at 100%. So if you say try, that means you failed, and that implies failure. So what you want to do is to say, well, I didn't get this opportunity. I'm ready for the next opportunity. I'm working on my next sale, right? So what's something they used to say back in the day? Every closed door will get you to an open door, but you have to go to the closed door in order to find the open doors. How much are you putting yourself out there? So let's take a look at a different example. Now, I have a friend of mine, and I asked him for a favor. Like, I couldn't remember the name of something that I had as a child, right? Like, and we were from the same neighborhood, and I was like, what's the name of that park? And I couldn't remember the name of the park, and I was so close to it, and I texted him, and I was like, hey, what's the name of that park? And he responds back, it's Park Safari. I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I couldn't remember it at the time. And I go, well, thanks. And then he responds back, no worries. So again, back to negation. So if you say something like no worries, then you're focused on the worries. You would say something like, you betcha, or anytime, something like that, right? But if you say no worries, then you're focused on the worries. And this may seem very small, yet at the same time, your subconscious is, trying, right? Trying, unless you listen to it, trying to come out. So you have to focus on what's going on internally so that you can align things. That's another thing in NLP too. Like, it's called parts of negotiation. One part wants good for you, and the other part doesn't want you to do something like a negative value to get the good thing for you. So what you do is you take those two parts and you bring them together and say, what's it going to take for us to work together? Because that's what happens when people are depressed, right? People are depressed because they're fighting internally about the situation that they're in, and what they, probably should do is sit down with the different parts of their ego and say, hey, look, we're all part of the same body, right? So what can we do to work together to get towards a goal? And again, if you want to learn more about negations and how that could be hurting you, we have a whole NLP course on the website as well. And this is something to keep in mind. And again, if you change the way you talk, you'll change the way you think, and then you'll also change the results that you get. So here's another example. Don't want to be too pushy. So we can take a look at this as well. What's being pushy? So here's something to keep in mind, right? So if you send somebody to contract and they have 7 days to decide, and maybe you're thinking that's kind of pushy, yet at the same time, if you don't give somebody a deadline or make them make a decision, then they won't make a decision. So even if the decision is not to go with you, then that's fine as well too. That'll free up your time to go find somebody who will go with you. And these are things that you might have to, sit down with your different parts of your ego and be like, okay, this is a realization because this is what it is. It's the, one of my coaches says, this is the law of gravity. If we could just accept that this is the law, like the law of gravity, then we can choose to work around it, or we can just accept for what it is so that we can get better results moving forward. And basically your subconscious mind is, in the background, right? So think of it like this. I don't know if you saw it in another video or not, but basically your conscious mind can only have so much information at one point, right? So that's something you do in hypnosis, right? I could tell you to focus on your left pinky, and that feeling was always there, but you weren't thinking about it until I brought your attention to it. So the more things, positive things you can bring your attention to, the more positive results that you'll get. So again, negations, right? So if I told you not to think of a purple elephant, you have to think of it in order to cross it out, but yet it's still in your mind. Now what do? So instead of focusing on things that you don't want, you want to focus on things that you do want. And then you can play a little game with yourself and start catching the different words that you use in order to place phrases in a proactive manner, and you just focus on those key words so you can create your self-fulfilling prophecies. And that's another thing about narcissists, right? They don't focus on the negative, they only focus on the positive and what they're going to do, and maybe their inflated ego will just carry them to where they want to go because they're not looking at any of the negative fall off. They're only looking at the place that they want to go. And that was one of the things when I worked for the talent agency, that it was just, the ego was just so big, and it was like, oh, I'm the only person that can do this. Well, I'm glad you're able to get the results that you got, yet at the same time, you're not the only person that can do that, and let me show you my way of doing it, and then we can get similar results. And even if I brought that results to this person, they would just say, well, I'm so glad I was here to show you how to do it to begin with, or something like that, right? So because a narcissist will always look towards, their light. And even if you brought like a whole list of that's not right, they wouldn't pay attention to it anyway. They would just, reframe to how it worked within their world. So just keep that in mind. In sales, right? If somebody brings up an objection, be like, oh, I'm so glad you had this objection. Let me explain to you how we can, work around that. And this could be like holding you back in your sales. If you're talking about, oh, this price may be too much for you, now you wouldn't want to say something like that, right? You would want to say, well, this is what we do, and this is we've had 300 events or so, and we've had contracts that go way higher than this, and this should work for you, and we've been in the game long enough to understand what the value of the market is, and this is a fair price. And then you would just have to build up your evidence to why it's a fair price, because remember, people that come to you aren't in that world. Like, they don't understand it. Like, you can just explain, well, I've done this for X number of years, and I understand the ins and outs. And if you don't have the experience, that's fine as well too. Maybe you'll just have to go to a lower price until you're able to build up your confidence, your resume, your Google reviews, or whatever that is. And when you sit down with people You don't want to talk about the negative things, or maybe if a client or a lead brings up negative things, you would just, drop in a dime and turn it into something positive. Because remember, when you say something, or nothing has any value other than the value that you give it. So anybody can bring something to you, and then you could flip it on any different direction. That's kind of like how politics work, right? Like, you might think this is bad, and then the other person would be like, well, this is good. And then, will you ever see eye to eye? Yet at the same time, again, another sales tactic, right? You can meet them where they're at. Well, I understand how you were able to come up with that belief, right? So, and I can see how you came up with that belief. Doesn't mean you have to believe it. You can just be like, okay, well, I understand you got there. I kind of believe here. And then you could pace them by just saying true statements, right? Like, oh, I understand you have this belief because you lived in this kind of area, and then you were able to see this when you were growing up, and I understand where you're at now, right? And at the same time, you would just slowly drift them over to, whatever the common goal is. You have to give me an example here. Maybe somebody come up and say, oh yeah, you're too expensive, right? And I can be like, okay, well, I understand how you came up with that. Or maybe you can ask clarifying questions like, well, how many people have you talked to come up with whatever number that's in your head? Have you talked to a lot of people? Have you booked a lot of these events? I mean, explain more about the number that you have. And then once you get that number, or the examples of how they came up with their number, maybe they don't have any examples. Maybe they just had a number in their head and thought that was logistics or something like that. Or maybe they went on Google, and you could just be like, well, Google doesn't know everything. You could start to pick apart whatever they have. And as long as you're not bringing up negative things, I mean, you should be good to go. Now, there are some sales out there where they bring up negative things intentionally, and you could do that for scarcity, although I don't really recommend it, because once you get somebody kind of worried, then that creates more worry. You just want to make sure that you reassure them. But you can make somebody problem aware. That seems to be a pretty popular thing in sales. And I mean, that's how you would flip negative things, right? Like, you wouldn't want a bad DJ on your wedding day, would you? You want to make sure that they show up. You want somebody who is, insured and been in the game, right? What's it going to be like when they don't show up to your wedding? I mean, you can put fear into them if you want. And I tend to stay away from that, even though you could build up a whole stack of things to say if that's what you're looking to do. So, better language patterns, right? I'm learning to close more efficiently. Instead of I'm trying to close more sales, you would say I'm learning to close more efficiently. No worries about the price, right? And then it would be, well, you can feel confident with this investment. Or you're too pushy. No, I'm professionally persistent. And again, a lot of people maybe get frustrated out there because they don't have as many leads coming in. So every time they sit down with somebody, it's like, oh, I got to close this because I don't know when my next sale's coming. So there's other things to look at as well. So maybe you haven't spent any money getting leads, like the Nod or Wedding Wire, Google ads, Facebook ads, which I don't really recommend Facebook ads. But at the same time, if you don't have leads coming in, then you won't have more opportunities to close a sale, work on your language patterns, and just kind of start, wherever you're at. And then just the more you become conscious of the words that you say, the better you'll be with your thought process. And I have a whole sleight of mouth course online to help you get out of any negative belief structure. Now, here's the funny thing about these belief structures, right? Somebody could be in a slump and not even know why they're in a slump. And that's why we're a coach, right? We can, I don't want to say push somebody into a different direction, but basically how they explain it in hypnosis is that, like, there's a maze, right? And then we just come with a flashlight and be like, oh, wouldn't that be a better idea? Wouldn't that be a better idea? And then you just kind of decide on your own, because it's not like we can make decisions for you. Then if we made decisions for you, or if somebody says, oh, you should do this or you should do that, then that puts the responsibility on me, right? Yet if I just show you a different way and then to get different results, then you've made that decision. All I did was open up the floodgates. And that's pretty much how hypnotherapy works, and that can work in your sales as well. Maybe someone's coming to you and they think a reasonable price is like $200. And you're like, well, why do you think that's a reasonable price? Like, it's a Saturday in April during prom season. Like, I only charge time for money. So why would I want to spend my time not making as much money as I could for the time that I have. So just keep that in mind as well. So again, just think about these things. You want to have a success mindset. The scarcity mindset will just drive you insane. I had it for such a long time. And if you want to learn how to build the abundance mindset, come to the Facebook group. I also have a few other classes, again, like an NLP, like NLP inside of mouth. I'd recommend that for anybody who's really looking to, build a stronger foundation. And well, guys, thanks for tuning into the video. And if this helped at all, just give me a thumbs up, follow, like, subscribe. I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks.